Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of A Modern Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Tasha Anderson, and I'm really excited today to have a conversation with Karen Nolte. Now, Karen and I actually know each other, not just colleagues at this point, but actually before I started this firm, I was actually essentially the CFO for Karen and her organization. And I was really excited to just bring her on board. She was my mentor for many, many years. And I want to dive a little bit more into how she was able to work for an organization for many years, became the CEO of that same organization, walk through a merger, Karen, you did, and now you're kind of on the other side, or at least still maybe on the tail end of coming out on that side, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Karen, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your words of wisdom and all of your years of leading a really significant size organization now, I would say.
I am delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So I know, Karen, when you and I work together, and certainly I think it still rings true, there's just this spirit of excellence. And we always say, and I still use this phrase to today, we are rule followers. I say that to I say that now, look, we are rule followers or doing things by the books. And because of that spirit and that kind of leadership style that you have, I think Family Forward is really, and even before then, before the organization merged and the organization that you were leading at that time, really developed a reputation of high quality, high integrity, and really just distinguished upon, many of the other, I guess, competing organizations, for lack of a better word. For example, I remember we were applying for an application for a pretty significant contract, and it was a huge compliment that they said, you all are kind of the standard. Once we get your application, we start comparing other applications to yours because we trust that, your application is of the highest quality standard. I thought that was, I'm sure you too, incredible compliment. So thank you so much for that, right? But tell me, what are some of the other ways or important ways that you within your organization, or maybe you counsel other organizations to distinguish yourself as a high quality organization? What are the, I guess, authoritative bodies you look at when you're thinking about these sorts of things?
I think one thing that's been helpful for us, both to publicly distinguish ourselves and also to have standards to work by, is to look for some type of national accreditation. So to work in this field, you pretty much need to be licensed. We're in child welfare, as you know, but most of the fields have some type of licensure that they need to work in with some basic standards, and that's great. To go beyond one step and to say we have voluntarily chosen to become accredited, I think is a really important step that you are telling the public you wanted to do more to be accountable to them. So there are certainly some of the bigger ones. You would be familiar with Council on Accreditation, or COA, because that's what we hold. There are others like CARF, and they provide great standards for organizations to compare themselves to, because they are putting out best standards and they are national. And that's a big step for some organizations. So for smaller organizations, one place I really like to counsel people to start is our local Better Business Bureau. So the Better Business Bureau nationally has standards. There are 20 organizational standards. They are grouped into 4 categories. They have one around governance and oversight, one around finances, one around measuring effectiveness, and then finally your solicitations and public materials. So within that, those 20 standards are a very good roadmap of accountability. The local office here will work with any charity that wants to pursue that, but that's a really good place to start. And it lets you know these are the best standards. These are the best practices of nonprofits. If you choose to go the Better Business Bureau route, the other nice piece about that, in addition to helping your organization, you are eligible to use a seal that is a Better Business Bureau seal. And I find that really is a way of speaking to other businesses, because they are very familiar with what they've had to do to become a seal holder. So national accreditation, local accreditation, something that says we did this voluntarily because we want to be the best, is a great place to start and to land.
And I think one of the things people probably don't realize that these accrediting, processes and the renewals are no joke. I mean, these are pretty rigorous to go through. And I remember one time looking at different software to really gauge programmatic outcomes. And so many organizations say they want to know these things. They want to know this information. They want to go through this process. but really, do you? Because I think once you go through these things, then you realize where your deficiencies are, where you're falling short, and then putting things in place in order to, continue to make improvements there. So I remember just with the program, that was one example. If we launch this thing and we have this, we will collect all of the data points to tell us whether we're effective or not. And that could be an ego blow, And I think that you could fill the blank in for any of those areas where, people could really have an ego blow with respect to, we thought we were doing everything properly. That absolutely is not a deterrent, by the way, to not go through this process. But you're absolutely right. The Better Business Bureau is a great place to start. And then, of course, like you said, Karen, the accreditation. And for those of you that don't know about accreditation, I would say, and Karen, you probably actually know this more than I do, even though obviously you work in child welfare primarily, but I have found there are multiple types of accrediting depending on your type and your mission of organization. So I've seen faith-based organizations, I've seen early childhood education, child welfare, like as Karen mentioned, Council on Accreditation or the COA. There's a bunch of different accrediting bodies. So if you're not familiar with accreditation, just do some searches, connect with other people within your immediate kind of service area network. And I'm sure that there are accrediting bodies specific to kind of the missions that you work with. I think COA might be one of the largest ones. Is that correct, Karen? I think so.
Yeah, and they just actually went through a merger, so they are pretty big now, but they do a good job and they're well recognized. And any of these are a way, as you said, to distinguish yourself. And if you are a good agency, you want to know about that data, you want to know where you, we're going to call them opportunities as opposed to deficiencies, but you want to know where you can improve, because that's what matters to your ultimately to serving whoever you serve or accomplishing your mission.